She was running from a burning cabin until the lone rancher grabbed her hand and said, "Northern New Mexico, late autumn, 1871. The wind howled through the thick pine trees, screaming like some wounded thing. Beneath the canopy, tucked into a gully hidden from the main trails, a small wooden cabin was burning. Flames licked the walls like they were hungry for more than wood. The roof had already begun to fold inward, groaning with the heat. Dry thatch, long unkept, ignited in an instant. Explosions of resin inside the logs cracked like gunfire, echoing across the cold mountainside. Out of the inferno burst a figure, barefoot, dress in tatters, hair tangled with soot and pine needles. Lena Hawthorne stumbled forward, clutching a child no older than 5 months against her chest. Her arms bore burns, her face was streaked with ash and tears, but her grip on the infant never loosened. Each step was a battle. Tree roots clawed at her ankles, stones sliced at her soles. Behind her, the fire roared louder. She did not look back. She could not. Just as she reached the front clearing, a support beam from the porch gave way above. She saw it a heartbeat too late. Her foot caught on the edge of the step. She fell forward, twisting midair to shield the baby with her body. The crack of burning wood tore through the air as a flaming crossbeam dropped straight toward her child. A blur moved. A man came out of the darkness like he had always been part of it. No sound warned of him. No rustle. No call. He dove between her and the collapsing timber, swung one arm like a scythe, and with a brutal effort, knocked the burning beam aside. His hand caught flame in the process, skin searing instantly, but he did not flinch. Before Lena could even gasp, the man crouched, scooped both her and the child into his arms, and turned. The back wall of the cabin exploded behind them, sending a wave of heat and debris into the air. Thatched straw rained down in fire and ash. The man ran. His boots found the slope behind the cabin, half frozen and slick with wet earth. They slid, bounced, rolled through mud and pine needles, down into a gully where the smoke thinned and the noise dimmed. When they stopped, Lena's breath caught. She lay sprawled on the cold ground, her body curled around the baby. The child whimpered but did not scream. Her hands trembled violently as she checked him, alive, coughing, terrified but alive. Only then did she lift her head. The man stood a few feet away, partially obscured by steam rising from his soaked coat. He had not even brushed the cinders off himself. One hand, the burnt one, hung loosely at his side. The other still held a small hatchet. His chest rose and fell steadily, unaffected by the chaos they had fled. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. Her throat felt full of ash and fear. He stepped closer, eyes locking with hers. The fire behind him painted the trees with shadows, but his voice came out calm, rough, like gravel turned to speech. "If you still want to live, don't look back." Lena blinked, stunned by the clarity of the moment. He did not ask her name. He did not demand answers. He offered her something she had not known she needed. Her hand reached up, not because she trusted him, not because she knew what else to do, but because her body remembered what it felt like to want to live. He took her hand without hesitation, and for the first time in years, someone held it, not to keep her there, not to own her, but to pull her forward. The ride through the forest was a blur of cold, wind, and silence. The horse's hooves struck the frozen ground with rhythmic urgency, carrying the weight of 3 souls through tangled pine and shattered moonlight. Cole Thorne didn't speak. He didn't turn back to check if the woman behind him was conscious, or if the child was breathing. He simply rode. Lena clung to the man's back, her arms around her baby, every breath a struggle against the pain in her ribs and the tightening chill in the air. Her dress stuck to her skin in places, damp with melted snow and ash. She had no sense of time, only that the flames were far behind now, swallowed by the mountain. When the horse finally slowed, it was to approach a clearing barely visible beneath the trees. There, half buried in brush and forgotten by maps, stood a weather-worn cabin. It leaned slightly to the left, its roof patched with mismatched shingles. A narrow corral stood to one side, and a shed hung open like a mouth agape. Cole dismounted in one fluid motion, landing in a crunch of frost. He turned and reached up, lifting Lena and the baby down without a word. She stumbled as her feet touched ground, nearly falling. He steadied her, then led them inside. The interior of the house was Spartan but intact. A single table, one rocking chair, a stove in the corner with cold iron and a heap of firewood nearby. Cole lit a lamp, its glow soft and gold against the wooden walls. He opened a door beside the hearth, an unused room, clean, small, with a cot pushed against the wall. He gestured toward the bed. Lena stood in the doorway, uncertain. The child whimpered in her arms. Without looking at her, Cole walked out. Moments later, he returned. In his arms, a basin of clean water, strips of linen, a wool blanket, a flat piece of bread wrapped in cloth, and a small tin jar. He placed them all neatly at the edge of the bed, then stepped back. Before she could speak, he turned and left again. This time, when he returned, he did not enter the room. He simply knelt outside the threshold and placed something small by the door, 2 tiny leather shoes, scrubbed clean of dirt and soot. Shoes, just the size for an infant. He had gone back out into the dark to find them. Lena stared at the shoes. Her throat tightened, and for a moment, her vision blurred. But she said nothing. She picked them up and placed them by the bed, beside the tin of balm. Later, after feeding the baby and wiping his face with the damp cloth, she sat on the edge of the bed. Her burns throbbed. Her bones ached. But she could breathe. She called out, voice dry, hesitant. "Why?" Cole was leaning against the doorframe. He didn't startle. He didn't shift. "You ran like someone with nothing left," he said, eyes steady, voice low. "I've seen that before. They don't live long unless someone stops running first." There was nothing in his tone but truth, no kindness, no demand. Lena said nothing more, but when she lay down, her hand resting protectively over her son's chest, her eyes closed without fear for the first time in years. And outside, in the cabin that belonged to no one, the man with no questions sat by the fire, sharpening a blade that hadn't tasted war in a long, long time. Snow fell in a thin, drifting veil, soft as ash from a dying fire. The air was hushed, broken only by the frantic scream of an animal in pain. Lena jolted awake, heart racing. She scooped up Eli and rushed outside, the cold biting into her feet through worn soles. At the far end of the corral, Cole was bracing against a panicked horse. One of its front legs was caught between a warped stall door and the frost-hardened ground. Blood streamed from the joint, steaming in the morning cold. The animal thrashed, wild-eyed and foaming, but Cole held firm. His boots dug into the slush, arms locked around the beast's neck in a brutal embrace, keeping it from snapping its own limb in fear. Lena did not think. She handed the baby into a hay-filled crate beside the fence and ran. She tore a strip from her skirt with her teeth and hands, then dropped to her knees beside Cole. Blood spattered her dress as she pressed the fabric around the wound, fingers steady despite the chill. Cole adjusted his grip. Together, wordlessly, they moved in sync. The horse calmed. Breathing slowed. The leg was freed. Cole let go and stepped back, chest heaving. His hands were slick with red and dirt. Lena wiped her own fingers on the edge of the trough, then looked up. His eyes met hers, not curious, not grateful, just seeing, for the first time perhaps, who she was without the fire or the fear. Later she sat on the porch, rinsing the blood from her hands. Cole returned from the tree line and placed a carved wooden bowl in front of her. Inside, crushed herbs and pine resin mixed into a thick, green paste. No explanation. "You helped," he said simply, voice like gravel. "Most don't." She nodded, though he had already turned to go. That night, Lena dreamed of footsteps. She woke suddenly, heart thudding. For a moment, She couldn't remember where she was. Then the creak of wood. A shadow moved past the frosted window pane. She rose, careful not to disturb Eli, and crept to the door. A glance outside showed the telltale shape of hoofprints in the fresh snow, already half filled by new flakes. Before she could step out, a hand landed lightly on her shoulder. She turned sharply. Cole stood behind her, eyes sharp, holding a rifle with practiced ease. He spoke low. "You told anyone where you were going?" She shook her head. "No." "Then someone's looking." He moved past her, scanning the trees. She stayed by the door, pressing her fingers to the cool wood. Not from fear. This was something different. A new tension that settled not in her limbs, but her chest. Cole checked the barn, reinforced the gates, and nailed an extra latch on the shed door. His motions were deliberate, silent. Lena sat at the small table after he was done. She opened the leather-bound notebook she kept hidden beneath the baby's cradle, the one her mother had given her before she died. She wrote in tidy strokes, her fingers trembling slightly from the cold. "A man who lives alone is not afraid of solitude, but he is afraid of losing the one thing he thought might be worth keeping. And I have brought danger to the one place that never asked me for anything." The flame in the lamp beside her guttered low. She looked toward the hallway where Cole had gone. Not to follow, not to speak, but to know. Someone else was finally awake tonight. The wind shifted that night, carrying the cold in a sharper current that crept beneath the cabin walls. Lena could not sleep. Eli stirred against her shoulder, warm and heavy, unaware of the storm in her chest. She wrapped him in his blanket and stepped outside, where the porch creaked beneath her bare feet. Cole was there. He sat on a low stool near the fire pit, sharpening a hoe blade with methodical strokes. Sparks leapt with each drag of metal against stone. The faint glow of embers cast a muted red across his face. He didn't glance up when she stepped into the light. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the scrape of steel and the distant groaning of the pines filled the silence. Lena lowered herself onto the edge of the porch, holding Eli close. His tiny breaths warmed the hollow above her collarbone. She watched the fire flicker, watched the blade glint, watched the man who had pulled her from a burning life sit as though he were carved from the mountain itself. Then, without knowing why, the words slipped out. "Do you believe," she said softly, "that some places are built only to hide people away?" Cole's hand stilled for a beat. The stone in his palm gleamed. He didn't look at her, but he gave a small nod, barely perceptible, but enough. An invitation. Or permission. Lena drew a breath. Her throat tightened, but she forced the air through it. "I grew up in the hills of Colorado. My father was a miner. Not a good one, not a lucky one, but a gentle man. He used to tell me the ground holds treasures we aren't always meant to dig up. Some things stay buried for a reason," he'd say. Her voice cracked. She closed her eyes, remembering the nights beside the lantern, listening to him hum tunelessly while cleaning his tools. He died in a snowstorm, or vanished in one. My mother was already gone by then, taken by a fever no one in town had the medicine to fight. She swallowed. People offered sympathy, but sympathy doesn't keep a girl alive. Cole still did not look up, but his grip on the stone shifted. "Wyatt Murdoch," she continued, "was my father's friend, or so he claimed. He came around after the funeral, said he'd help me, said no girl deserved to be alone in the mountains." A bitter smile crossed her lips, faint as breath. "He gave me a wedding ring and a sermon, and the moment I said yes, he drove me deeper into the woods than I'd ever been. Past the trails, past the creeks, past everything I knew. He took me to a cabin that wasn't on any map." Her arms tightened around Eli. No neighbors, no mail, no way out unless he unlocked the door. "He didn't chain me, not at first, but he took my books, my mother's things, my clothes, anything that reminded me who I had been before him." She stared into the fire, watching it crackle like the memory of her prison. "He said he was cleansing me of the past. He said people were better when the world forgot about them. Cole finally lifted his gaze. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture did. Subtle, taut. I tried to run twice. Once, when he was drunk. Once, when he was gone too long. Both times he found me. Both times he burned something I loved as punishment. Her eyes dropped. The second time, I was already carrying Eli. The baby shifted, pressing his cheek against her chest. Lena brushed his hair gently, steadying herself. Wyatt was dealing with a gang from the Four Corners region. He shorted them on a weapons shipment. Took their money, hid the rest, lied about the delivery. They followed the trail back to the cabin. The wind groaned through the trees like a warning. They weren't looking for me. They were looking for him. When they didn't find what they wanted, they tore the place apart, then set it on fire. Her voice lowered to a whisper. I was locked inside. They didn't know. Or didn't care. Cole's jaw tightened, a single muscle flickering like a spark beneath his skin. I thought, Lena said, her fingers shaking, that dying in that fire might be the only way I'd leave that place. She paused, forcing the last confession forward. At least it wouldn't be a silent death. Cole's reply came low, steady, almost gentle. But you did not die. Her breath hitched. You ran. And I saw your hand reach through the flames. That was not the hand of someone giving up. That was someone choosing to live. Lena looked at him, really looked. And what passed between them wasn't pity, wasn't comfort. It was recognition. Two people who had lost everything, except themselves. The sun stood still at its highest, casting sharp shadows across the ranch yard. Lena hung the last of the damp linens on the line, her hands chapped from washwater and wind. Cole, a few yards away, knelt beside the fence, fixing a broken rail with slow, deliberate strokes of his hammer. Then came the sound. A horse. One rider. Approaching from the north trail. The one no one ever used unless they knew exactly where they were going. Cole stood slowly. Lena froze, the cloth slipping from her hands. The rider emerged from between the pines like a ghost from the past, filthy, bruised, but unmistakably alive. Wyatt Murdoch. He reined his horse to a halt just beyond the fence and dismounted with a kind of lazy confidence, like he'd never left, like the world owed him a welcome. Well, he said, brushing dust from his coat, took a little detour. And look what I find. His gaze slid to Lena, then to the child in her arms. What's that old saying? You leave a dog too long, it forgets who fed it. Cole moved between them, shoulders squared. Wyatt's lip curled. Easy now, cowboy. I ain't here to start trouble. Just to collect what's mine. Lena's arms tightened around Eli. He is not yours. Wyatt's smile didn't reach his eyes. He's got my name. That's enough. Cole didn't blink. His voice, when it came, was low and cold. You're not taking the boy. Wyatt chuckled. Funny. How you think you've got a say. I built the roof that sheltered him, bought the bread that fed him. He's mine. Lena stepped forward, anger bright in her voice. You bought silence. You fed fear. That's all you ever gave. Wyatt's eyes flared. Don't go rewriting history, sweetheart. You stayed. That counts for something. No, she said. I survived. He pointed at the child. I need him. There's a crew waiting out east. New money, new blood. But they need proof I can deliver. A son. He's leverage. He's value. You're not taking him, Cole repeated, stepping closer. Wyatt's voice dropped to a hiss. You think you can stop me? I know I can, Cole said. One more step. I'll plant you in this dirt. And no one will ask why. They stared at each other. Two men carved from different lives. One hardened by war, the other by cruelty. Then Wyatt laughed. Fine, he said. Keep your little family a while longer. But don't think this is over. He climbed back onto his horse, gaze dark with promise. "I'll be back, and next time, I won't come alone." Lena held Eli tighter as Wyatt disappeared into the trees, his shadow stretching long behind him. Cole exhaled slowly and turned away. "Will he come back?" Lena asked. Cole didn't look at her. Yes, and that was all. They went back to work in silence, but the wind had changed. The sky was still blue, the sun still shone, but something darker now loomed at the edge of the forest. Something coming. And it would not ask for permission. Cole did not sleep that night. He sat on the porch with his back against the post, rifle across his knees, watching the tree line though there was no moon to see by. The wind shifted from the north, bringing the scent of pine, smoke, and something heavier, memory. Inside, Lena lay with Eli curled against her chest. Her eyes were open, unfocused, not on the cracked ceiling but on the space just above it, on the fear she refused to name. She did not cry, did not whisper prayers, but her hand never left her son's back. At dawn, before the sun had cut through the mist, Cole moved. He went to the storage shed behind the barn and pulled out a wooden crate bound with rusted wire. He hadn't opened it in years. Inside were weapons wrapped in oilcloth, old cartridges in paper boxes, a leather belt stiff with time, tools from a war he had promised never to fight again. He carried them to the house, laid them on the table, and began cleaning the rifle with quiet precision. His movements were slow, sure, intentional. Lena came in, still in the nightdress, face pale in the cold morning light. She watched him in silence. Later, without a word, Cole showed her how to hold the pistol, how to load and unload it, how to fire. He set up a makeshift target behind the shed and stood beside her while she tried, correcting gently, never raising his voice. He showed her where the bear traps were buried, how the doors locked from the inside, how to use the narrow crawl space under the house if needed. Not once did he ask her to stay, but not once did he act like she would leave. When he nailed fresh planks over the weakest window, Lena stood beside him, holding the boards. When he salted the steps, she followed behind, checking for gaps. In the afternoon, she found him on the porch, sharpening his knife. She sat beside him and held out the necklace she always wore, the small silver locket warm from her skin. She opened it and showed him the photo inside, her parents, younger than she remembered. "If something happens," she said softly, "give this to Eli. Tell him." His mother chose not to run. Cole didn't speak at first. He reached into his coat and pulled out a weather-worn journal, the kind soldiers carried into battle. He turned to a page near the middle, one marked with soot and smudges. He set it in her hands. She read the line, "Save someone. Don't die inside like I did." She looked up. Their eyes met. No longing, no pity, only truth between them. "You think I should leave?" she asked, her voice steady. "I think," Cole said, "if you run now, you'll run the rest of your life. And Eli will learn what fear looks like, instead of what it means to stand." She didn't nod, didn't answer, but she set the locket beside the journal and placed her hand over both. That evening, Cole cooked supper, and Lena lit the lamps. Eli babbled in the corner, unaware of the storm that hung just beyond the trees. When night fell again, the wind carried more than memory. It carried the weight of decision, and neither of them would face it alone. The sun was bleeding out behind the ridge when they came. 3 riders. One of them, unmistakably Wyatt Murdoch, hat pulled low, rifle across his back, and a grin twisted by something more than confidence. The 2 men flanking him were broader, darker, and carried weapons not meant for warning. Cole was at the trough with his horse when he heard it. The rhythm of hooves too controlled for travelers, too deliberate for wanderers. He straightened, eyes narrowing. Lena, on the porch with Eli in her arms, froze as the silhouette of horses cut across the horizon. The wind shifted. The forest went silent. Wyatt pulled his horse to a stop 10 feet from the gate, dismounted slow, like a man stepping into his own house. His boots crunched on gravel. "I don't want the wife," he said. voice loud enough to carry. "But the boy, I'll take, even if I have to burn down another goddamn house to do it." Cole stepped forward from the side of the barn, rifle in hand, jaw set like stone. "Turn around." One of Wyatt's men raised his gun and fired into the air. Click. A bear trap, hidden beneath scattered leaves, snapped shut with a metallic howl, clamping down on the second man's leg. He screamed, crumpling. Chaos exploded. Cole raised his rifle and fired. One shot clean into the chest of the gunman still standing. The man collapsed like a sack of grain. Wyatt dove behind the wagon, bullets cutting through the air. One clipped Cole's shoulder, sending a hot line of pain across his skin. Inside the house, Lena set Eli in a crawlspace behind the stove, kissed his forehead once, and turned. She picked up the pistol Cole had shown her how to use, loaded and waiting. Her breath was steady. Her hands didn't shake. The door burst open. Wyatt stepped inside, boots caked with mud and blood, rifle slung low. He scanned the room and froze when he saw her. "Well now," he sneered. "Look at you. You think you've got teeth now?" Lena didn't answer. She raised the gun. He laughed. "You won't shoot me. You never had the spine," she said quietly. "I never had a reason to live before." Then she fired. The shot struck his thigh. He dropped with a shout, clutching the wound, but the fire in his eyes didn't fade. He reached into his coat and pulled out a knife, dragging himself forward like a dying animal. Just as he lunged, Cole stormed in through the kitchen door. Wyatt swung the blade. Cole blocked with the rifle stock and drove his shoulder into him, knocking them both into the kitchen table. It splintered. Blood smeared across the floor as they wrestled, fists slamming against wood and bone. Wyatt struck hard, slicing Cole's forearm. Cole grunted, then slammed his fist into Wyatt's face. Once, twice, the knife clattered to the ground. Cole pinned him down with the butt of the rifle. Breathing ragged, he looked into Wyatt's bloodied face. "You already burned one home to the ground," Cole growled. "But this time, I won't let you burn another soul." Wyatt's mouth twisted, but he said nothing. His defiance was a whimper now. Lena stepped beside them, gun still in hand. Cole stood slowly, then used rope from the barn to bind Wyatt's hands behind his back. His blood dripped onto the porch as they loaded him onto one of the horses. By nightfall, the sheriff from the nearest town arrived, tipped off by smoke and distant gunshots. They handed Wyatt over without ceremony. No last words, no justice speech, just a name finally written into a ledger where it always belonged. Wyatt Murdoch, murderer, smuggler, kidnapper, and no longer a ghost. After the fire, the blood, and the silence that followed, the ranch felt different. Not haunted, not broken, just quiet in a way that carried meaning. Lena cut her hair short. She stood at the kitchen basin, scissors shaking only once, and let the locks fall. With each snip, she shed the weight of all she had run from. Cole watched from the barn but said nothing. Later that day, he removed the last rifle hanging above the mantel and wrapped it in canvas. No words, no ceremony, just the end of a chapter. They did not speak much, but in that silence bloomed something soft, something whole. Lena took the old storage shed and cleared it out. She scrubbed the dust, patched the holes, and turned it into a reading room. There, she taught Eli to recognize letters, sounding them out slowly as he traced them with chubby fingers. She read fairy tales at dusk, stories where brave girls outran monsters, and kind men built homes with their bare hands. Eli listened, curled on her lap, eyes wide with wonder. Meanwhile, Cole took to the ledger he once used in the war. It had held dying men's names, final words, and unkept promises. Now, it began with something new. "I did not save the world," he wrote, "but I saved one woman, and she saved me back. Snow fell early that year. Thick, silent flakes covered the roof and blanketed the fields in white." One evening, Lena stood by the front door, wrapping Eli snug in a woolen blanket. She watched Cole hammer a loose board into place on the porch. His shoulders moved slow but steady, methodical as always. She stepped up beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "I never thought I deserved a home," she whispered. "But if you do not already have someone calling this place home, I would like to." Cole did not turn. He reached out and took her hand. The same hand he had pulled from fire, from fear, from the edge of running forever. Calloused fingers closed around hers. And this time, he did not say, "Do not look back." He said simply, "Stay." They never put up a nameplate, never held a ceremony. There were no rings, no declarations. But seasons passed, and folks who traveled the Timberline Trail began to notice the little cabin with a reading nook and smoke curling soft from the chimney. They saw a boy named Eli playing near a well, stacking stones and humming without fear. They saw a woman with quiet eyes reading aloud from a rocking chair on the porch. And they saw a man building a new fence by hand, always glancing toward the porch, not as a guard, but as someone who knew what it meant to finally belong. It was not a place marked on maps, but everyone who passed by knew what it was. A place where someone was seen, and a place where someone stayed. Thank you for riding with us through the fire, the silence, and the shelter that followed. If she was running from a burning cabin, until the lone rancher grabbed her hand and said, "Moved you," if you felt the wind of the timberline, or heard the crackle of the old cabin fire, don't let this be your last ride with us. Hit that hype button if you believe in second chances. Drop a comment to tell us, what would you have said if you were Cole? And don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Love Stories, where every story begins with grit and ends with heart. We'll see you on the next trail.